Hello and welcome to the full FX Unfiltered. This edition is in association with 360T, and my name is Colin Lambert. I'm publisher of the full FX, and I'm delighted to be joined by Robin Nicholas, who is head of the FX swap products at 360T. Robin, nice to see you.
Delighted to be here. Thank you, Colin.
I thought it would be a good opportunity to actually talk about what's going on at 360T. I want to get to Sun because obviously I'm quite keen on Sun, but I thought it'd be good to maybe kick off with your observations around the broader electronification of FX swaps, because it still looks to me to be a bit of a patchy process.
You've definitely hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
That electronification has been slow in the FX market. We've obviously seen the RFS model at 360T for a long time, and that's been very successful, and it's a core part of our business, and that's something which we're still very supportive of, and will continue to be.
Yeah.
I think though, where we've tried to bring in Sun, which you've just alluded to, is to try and find a way to electronify the interbank side of the market, which for us has been crying out for something, some change over the last 20 or so years.
Yep.
And that hasn't really occurred. There hasn't been a lot of change since even I traded some FX swaps back in the day. So I think that is something which we've really tried to do. We try to communicate that. We try to keep that message consistently going over the last few years.
Yeah.
I think there's been a few things which have helped that, perhaps. The greater transparency in market data. So obviously our swap data feed, which has been a really successful product for us. And for those people that aren't aware of the swap data feed, that's contributing banks, giving us their full curve out to, in some cases, 10 years, but in some cases to a shorter tenor. But effectively, at major points, month ends, IMM dates, central bank data, really being able to give us a much more accurate representation of where the market is, which I think that transparency is helping all of our clients, banks and buy side, to really understand where the market is, and from that, perhaps make better informed trading decisions.
I guess we were just chatting briefly before, and we're talking about bank traders. They have a curve. Effectively, the swaps data feed is providing the curve.
Absolutely, and I think we often hear, "Well, your mid isn't my mid."
Yeah,
that's okay. It's okay to have that difference. To me, that creates opportunity. And I think when you stop and you think about it, and you start to look at the data that's available, and you start to see where other people perhaps think that market is moving towards, that perhaps creates an opportunity for you. Yeah. And there's a lot of press at the moment around markouts and trying to figure out, particularly in forwards and swaps, what the value of the true value of a trade is at the point or further down the line.
The true value of a trade and then you suddenly throw credit into the mix.
Absolutely, and it's a really tricky thing. But if you have at least a better view of where the market potentially is and where others see that, then that can certainly help to make better informed decisions.
Yeah. So where does Sun sit in this? And I mean, maybe for some of our viewers, you could give a quick refresh on what Sun is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But where it sits in the product range.
Yeah. So Sun, first of all, just to I guess give that overview. Swap user network. We've decided we're going to target the interbank market initially, and
which is huge. I mean, it's probably huge. 2/3 at least of the
absolutely. And I think if we're going to get change in this industry, in this part of the segment of the industry, then we have to think about how we can support traders, both voice and E, in terms of being able to be more efficient with what they do, more profitable with what they do, and provide them with those tools effectively. And those tools, as I say, could be either the ability to leave resting bids and offers in an order book, which is not rocket science. It's sort of been done before, but marrying that with a mid-market, which is effectively a dark pool. No signaling of direction or size, purely that there is intent in, let's say, Euro 3 months to do something.
And that kind of reflects the voice world, doesn't it? I mean,
it does.
If you're trading with a voice broker, and I think I noted the other day, like 40% of swaps in London were still with a voice broker at one stage. It's effectively dark. You know there's an interest, but it's only when that voice broker brings them together.
Absolutely.
Which I guess is kind of what you're achieving here.
And that's kind of what we're trying to do. I would say a lot of the conversations we have, it's often fielding objections.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have this. How are you going to do that? Well, I need to do this. And that could be auto-adjusting the swap pips. It could be trading at mid.
Yeah.
It could be leakage. We think we've come up with some pretty nifty tools and features which allow to solve those problems. Just came from a very interesting conversation with a head of STIRT at a very large institution, and there's a long list of objections, and we were able to answer every single one, at which point
Which is good.
there was some real attention being paid,
Yeah.
which I think shows that we're listening. We're not going to replace a voice broker by any means. There's still a market for that. There's still a place for all of this. We're just part of that ecosystem. And I think if we can bring more tools, and initially part of that is for the voice guys, but equally we want to electronify as well. So the adoption of APIs.
And it becomes another source of liquidity for those voice traders anyway, doesn't
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned APIs at the end there. I mean, is that one of the obstacles that you've had to overcome?
A little bit, I think. I don't
Yeah.
think necessarily that every bank is able to connect to an RFS,
Yes.
whether as a take-in bank or as a make-in bank, and that's a model which we've supported for a long time, and is a pretty key part of the segment. But I think in terms of market making, or being able to hedge your risk, or get an axe out there, skewing a price, having that done electronically is not something necessarily the banks have done in swaps. They've done it in spot for a long time.
Yeah.
And the more forward-thinking banks have certainly started to move towards that. And there's an opportunity there which people are starting to realise. And I think those first movers are starting to see some rewards from that.
So where does Sun sit alongside the existing RFS product then? Because you mentioned axes, for instance. Obviously, an axe could be towards, well, it's likely to be towards mid. It's great if there's another bank on the other side, but actually there could be a client actually looking for that axe.
So we see it as a complementary product.
Yeah.
I think we have a large pool of taker banks, if you like, and I think there has been a question raised. Is this cannibalising your existing business? We don't see it that way. We see this as a complementary product which can work alongside that.
Yeah.
Over time, we'll see how that sort of develops. But I think the opportunity for banks now to, whether they are a huge tier one universal bank that wants to market make and have that position electronically, or whether they're a smaller regional bank that has an expertise in their local currencies, which they feel that they can get that out there and promote, that's an opportunity for them. And I think we're seeing that at all ends of both ends of the scale.
Yeah. It's around a year when we're talking since Sun probably went fully live. I mean, obviously, projects take a lot longer than that. I'm aware of that one. You're looking remarkably relaxed on that basis, actually. But I mean, roughly a year on. I mean, how is Sun going? Yeah, so compared to expectations.
Yeah, look, I think we see volumes going up. That's positive for us. I think that it's been a slow process. The adoption has been a little slow. Yeah. Having said that, the last 6 months, I think we've seen a shift in the way that banks are looking at this now. So there's a couple of obstacles that they've had to overcome internally. Yeah. So it's understanding how they're going to automate credit. Maybe we can talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute. Yeah. Can they automate the way they want to place their orders? And they've started to get their heads around that. And we're now having meaningful conversations. Work is underway. We have a number of banks who are already live and are streaming. And again, we can perhaps get into the type of orders and the way they're using it. But there is a significant change in the appetite to adopt electronic trading swaps. Okay. And that's, for me, the most meaningful thing. So I think, when we start to look at the forward, no pun intended, but when we look the forward view of this.
I should hope pun is fully intended.
But, we're really positive about this. This is everything's starting to fall into place. And it's only going to take one or two more pieces of that jigsaw for this to really be where we believe it to be.
So let's drag that optimism back again. 23 years ago, I remember attending my first P&L conference, and I heard the phrase "credit is a bottleneck." Yeah. 23 years on, we're into full effects in a couple of weeks, and I'm sure at some stage I'm going to hear credit is a bottleneck.
Look, it
how do we
certainly
overcome
is.
this?
Yeah. So look, it certainly is, and it's one of the things that, to be honest, we looked at right at the start, and we had to try and figure out how are we going to solve the problem that is credit.
Yeah.
And clearing's been mentioned in the past, and that's been debated, to the sort of nth degree, and that the cost of that has to come down for that to be something that the FX swap shorter date or shorter ends can really start to use. So then we start to look at bilateral credit and how do those models work, or central counterparties that sit in the middle.
Yeah.
We chose a model which was bilateral credit. It's what people
know.
The
central
today.
counterparty is actually quite an interesting, because where it may have worked 3 or 4 years ago, now the regulatory costs around that become quite steep, don't they?
It's a model which we decided not to adopt.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah.
But for us, sticking with a lot of, I guess, our design has been based on simplicity and what do we know today. So we're innovating, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if you go too far, sometimes it's too much of a stretch, too much of a reach for people, because we're already asking them to do technology change.
Yeah.
So when we look at credit, we're talking about bilateral credit, and we're talking about how can we automate that? How can we make that instantaneous, instead of having to have a soft match with some manual credit check-in with going to another system, logging in somewhere else, taking time.
I'm getting nostalgic.
I mean, look, we're talking in swap terms, not spot, but we're down to average credit check times, if they've fully automated to our FX API, of less than 100 milliseconds.
Yeah.
Which is light speed.
Yes.
And that, to us, is the biggest change. We've now got over a third of the participants on the platform with some form of fully automated credit, fully automated.
Yeah.
The rest of them are using a tool that sits within 360T, a limit monitor tool, which allows them to create very sophisticated, either simple or very granular rules around each counterparty by tenor, by currency pair, different algorithms, notionals can be applied to that, including PFE algorithms. So it's designed so that when we have a conversation with a credit officer, they are really quite impressed. This is something which we've taken seriously.
And that is a different conversation to one you have with the trader.
It is very much so. And a trader will often say, look, well, I'm never going to get this through credit. If I've got to do a hard carve out, I'm never going to get that through. Well, let us speak to the credit guys. Let us talk them through the model, how it works, how you can interact with that. We've got REST APIs that allow you to automate that part of the process if you want to use that. We've got a FX API if you want to talk directly to your credit engine. So there's lots of different ways we've tried to solve that. And then if you bring into the equation third parties and market utilities which may grow around this, which I think there are obviously some out there already. We're partnering with these guys, and I think that to us, if we can create a level playing field around credit, it actually opens up this electronification and potentially the growth of FX swaps even further.
You mentioned also just earlier on there different usage, different order types.
Yes,
because it strikes me the other thing that needs to drive the electronification of swaps is more flexibility around how
absolutely.
you interact with liquidity. So what's happening there?
Well, again, this is one of the things we've sort of been listening to. Look, I can leave a limit order. Okay, everyone knows how to do that. That's pretty straightforward. But actually, when I call my voice broker, what do? I'm saying, okay, look, I'm here, but I can have a little bit of discretion. What if I want to put a strip of orders in? I can give that verbally to my voice broker, but if I get hit in one, he knows he's not going to fill me in the others. What if I want to place a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more and just feed that through, on time delays or however I want to do that. So things that we've seen elsewhere, we've built that into Sun. Okay. So those tools are there.
Right.
So
effectively on a screen in front of that trader, it's not going to look any different. It's just going to look electronified process of what they're doing already.
And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool things people are talking. We're not there yet, but people are talking about how can we do this via AI? Can I just shout at my screen? And that's maybe going too far.
I was going to say that's some of the people I know in the market. It could be a bit risky.
I'm not sure how the AI guy is going to go with HR, but
no, exactly, yeah. But I mean, that's an interesting point, though. I mean, so just to close out, then, what is next around FX swaps? What are the plans going forward? Because obviously AI is the buzzword. It is ubiquitous in pretty much our world and the outside world. What happens next with the swaps there? Because you're clearly on a journey, clearly not there all the way there yet, maybe never will be, because the destination always changes, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. And look, 360T's got a whole suite of products. A lot of them focused around FX swaps.
Yep.
And as I mentioned earlier, that's a core part of our business.
Yep.
What we've got to look at is how do we integrate all of those together? How do we bring them and join them together so it's a truly holistic model?
Yep.
And there are plans to do that. How do we look at futures, which obviously we've talked about in the past, and that's a big part of what we're trying to do as well. How do we get that into that swaps world as well, so that effectively as a trader, you can log in, you can see what you need to do. You can see that in whether it's RFS, whether it's Sun, whether it's your futures hedging that you want to do. All of that is accessible via one point effectively, and that's what we're trying to build out really. That ecosystem where one-stop shop for all your executions.
Which kind of sounds a bit like an electronified voice broker in many ways,
Look,
with a bit of fancy workflow around it.
To a degree, but
I guess my point is, more seriously, is the actual workflow of the trader's not going to change that much. It'll just become a lot more efficient.
And that's the hope. And I think, look, when you think about how the role and the job of a voice trader might change, we've seen that in spot. And I don't think we're going to see huge shifts of empty desks. We're not going to see that at all. That's certainly not the intention here at all. The intention is to provide tools and features which aid you, which allow you to concentrate on the chunkier, more interesting trades. We see a lot of that short date business. It's churn, it's chore. It's something which can be automated and probably should be. And then should allow greater focus on where it's slightly more attractive and where perhaps money is to be made.
And all this against a background of what I would call, from a veteran standpoint, normalisation of interest rates.
Yes.
Where actually there is a spread. There are actually sort of interest rate differentials back in the world. So
absolutely.
It's,
and it always creates opportunity, and it goes back to what we said at the beginning in terms of where the mid is, where my mid is, where your mid is. There's always opportunity, and when you see that little bit of volatility, then that creates those chances and those opportunities for people.
I love a bit of circularity.
Absolutely.
Robin, great talking to you today.
No, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for coming
cheers,
in.
Colin.
And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back again very soon.